Aloha, everyone, and welcome to Experiencers Network. And I'm your host, Janet Lessin, with my co-host, Andrew Aloha, and this is the Aquarian Radio Network. Today, our special guest is Seriah Azkath, and he has been studying the unknown for about 35 years and is currently working on a couple books about all of his experiences. His studies have spanned from the UFO Phenomenon, ghost and psychic abilities, to comparative religion and the occult, to lost civilizations and alternative history, to consciousness and reality. He is very science-minded and investigates new science and alternative science as well. Seriah is a true skeptic, not a debunker. He questions everything and doesn't dismiss anything completely out of hand. He has been on radio for over 25 years now, hosting a heavy metal-based show called The Last Exit for the Lost, which follows this show. Well, I got this from his bio. Okay, on his show, he talks about Seriah's lifetime and strange experiences and his ideas dealing with the unknown and paranormal, whether it be approaches or what I think he thinks are really experiencing. Anyway, I kind of have that aspect. So we're going to be talking to Seriah. But before we bring on Seriah, I want to test the mic here with Andrew Aloha, our co-host, to bring him on. Andrew, aloha. Welcome to the show.
Yes, aloha. Thank you. What's going
so cool
on?
That your last name is Aloha.
Yes.
Yes. We'll have to talk about how you got that name someday.
Yeah, we could. So anyhow, aloha, Seriah. Thanks for stopping by.
Hey. Glad to be here.
Is that how you say your name, Seriah?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Just checking.
What about your last name? How do you pronounce your last name? Oh, I did it.
Azkath.
I did it. Thank you. I love it when I get it right. So we're going to listen to you for about 15, 20 minutes. You're going to tell us your story. You've got all these things that you're, expert on, the UFO phenomenon, ghosts, psychic abilities, comparative religion, the egg. So we're going to just pay attention to you. We'll take notes. In about 15 minutes or so, we'll ask you some questions and just keep the dialogue going. And we'll go for up to 2 hours, but somewhere, whenever you want to break, let me know. We can take a 5-minute break or a 3-minute break. But take it away, Seriah. We're all ears.
Well, would you like to? What do you want me to do? You want me to get into the theories on this stuff, or do you want to get into my experiences?
I'd like to go with the personal first, because that's always the most interesting. Because how did you get here?
Okay.
What inspired you? Go ahead.
Okay. So I was always interested in like unexplained phenomena and mysteries and stuff. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronomer. I wanted to be an archaeologist because I thought that's how you look for UFOs or lost civilizations. And of course, that was kind of dashed when I realized that that's not what these people do. I thought it was funny that Jacques Vallée, one of the best ufologists out there, he became an astronomer partially because he wanted to look for UFOs. And I was kind of like, yeah, I know how that's feeling. But I wasn't all that serious into the stuff. I just found it fascinating when I was a kid. When I hit my early teens, I had what's called a morbid Kundalini awakening. And that's when your Kundalini energy just suddenly wakes up fully and completely with no control. It made me very, very sick. I would say it ruined my life, but it took me to where I am now, so I have a hard time saying that because I kind of like where I am now. But at the time, it felt like it was destroying my life because it made it so I could barely function. Kundalini awakening can have all kinds of very negative effects. For instance, what I knew were hallucinations. I played the trombone, and I would see smoke coming out of the head of the end piece of the trombone while I was playing. I knew there was no smoke coming out, but yet I was watching it happen. And if I had my mother come in, I was maybe 12 or 13 at the time, it didn't do it. And then she'd leave, and I'd get that again. When I was trying to fall asleep, I would hear like bells or cans rattling. And I knew there was no reason to be hearing this stuff. I knew this was just in my head, but it was very, very clear and distinct. It wasn't until much, much later I learned that this was what Kundalini was. But most people deal with Kundalini intentionally. They go through Kundalini yoga. They learn to wake it up in a controlled fashion, in a slow fashion, so that they deal with it as it goes. But our culture at the time, this was the 1980s, and this stuff was completely unknown. There was no internet to look it up on or anything. So I dealt with this for quite a few years. It made life very, very difficult because it caused me a lot of pain that doctors couldn't find any cause for. It made my parents think I was making it up after a while because the doctors couldn't find anything wrong with me. And I went to a lot of doctors for this stuff. I believe at one point they even sent me to a psychologist thinking I was just making all this stuff up, and the psychologist came back with, he seems perfectly fine. Unlike a lot of people who have had weird experiences later in their lives, I did not have a traumatic childhood. I didn't have any, and my childhood was pretty damn good, honestly.
How did you conclude it was Kundalini? What was the symptoms, and what were the, where did you make that connection? Because I had a Kundalini awakening, and it was like crazy trying to, and that was in the late 80s, early 90s, around 90, 89, 90. Couldn't find any information.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I found it because there was an ad. There was an ad in Fate magazine for like a Llewellyn newsletter or something like that, and I'd gotten that, and in there was a whole article on a book about Kundalini, and it was describing all the symptoms. And I'm looking through it, going, wait a minute, this is everything I'm experiencing minus maybe one or two things. You know, electrical sensation, trouble with electronics.
What are those symptoms? What are you talking about? What is a Kundalini experience, awakening?
So there's a lot of different things. There's pain generally along chakra points, which I didn't know were a thing. You can have, as I said, hallucinations. They're very specific hallucinations. You can have vibrations that feel like your entire body is shaking apart. You can have the sensation of electricity running through you. You can be extremely electrosensitive. Whatever it is has a lot to do with electricity. It will, like, there were times that I've literally knocked someone across the room from what should have been a mild static electric charge. There's a whole list, and not everyone has all of them. But it's a vast number of things that it can cause, and it can actually cause physical illness. I've met a few people now who had blocked Kundalini energy that was literally making them sick.
Mm-hmm.
So I had found the list in Fate magazine there, and I'm reading it, and I ordered the book, and the book was okay. I think it's called Kundalini and the Chakras, and what it did, though, is it helped me understand what I was dealing with. And then I started looking for deeper resources on Kundalini. There's a great John White compilation that talks about all kinds of Kundalini awakening and all the different things that can come with it. But once I understood what it was, I was able to sort of balance it out a little bit, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Uh-huh.
I was, using meditation and things like that, I was able to control it a little bit better. And
fascinating.
At the same time, I started getting into the occult, which is not something I necessarily believed in. It was one of the things where, like, it was interesting, but I figured it was all both. So I started kind of very openly, starting with Wicca and then moving on from there. I started doing different types of stuff and actually getting responses where I had to kind of rethink this and be like, oh, maybe there is something to this. And from there, I had a lot. Let me run down some of these Kundalini experiences.
Okay.
Still there? Okay.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Twitching cramps, spontaneous movement, like getting jolts of electricity to the muscle, pulsating energy. For instance, especially when I sleep, sometimes my whole body pulsates. You can have sudden outbursts of anger or feel really, really good with no outside influence. It just kind of hits you. You can get very, very hot or very, very cold. Usually I get very, very hot. Like, it's one of those things that people who study spontaneous human combustion, Kundalini is one of those things on the list of what might be causing it, because you can get so hot. And I talked to a couple people who had mild bits of flame shoot out of like their hands or feet when they were having a very hot Kundalini burst. By the same token, you can get very, very cold. And I have had instances where it was like 95 degrees and humid out, and I was so cold I was shivering. Electrosensitivity, which I covered, it's also very associated with sexual energy and can really ramp up your sex drive, or it can completely kill it. You can have just random symptoms like racing heartbeat, intense pressure in your skull, like especially in the back. It sometimes would make me feel like my skull had been cracked open. You see an increase in things like psychic abilities. I've had premonitions and dreams and stuff through most of my life at this point. Poltergeist phenomena is common. Also laughing. It can give you laughing fits. And there are actually videos online of what are called laughing churches. And these are churches where they believe they're bringing in the Holy Spirit. And the lead guy will touch someone and transfer that laughing to them, and they'll transfer it to the next person in line, so on and so forth. And I've had that experience with Kundalini. Laughing, you have no idea why. And if you touch someone, they'll start laughing too. And it tends to scare people the very first time it happens. So in the midst of all this, as I said, I went into dealing with, like first Wicca, and then like I started studying Crowley and stuff. And I was kind of like, I don't believe any of this stuff works. So I started doing rituals and then started getting results. And was like, oh, so this stuff does work. And that kind of led me down a path that intersected with like UFOs and things like that. I've seen a few UFOs in my life. I've had, I think it was when I was reading Strieber's Transformation, I realized that a lot of the experiences he was talking about with his visitors were very similar to experiences I had, but they were in the context of like this occult sort of stuff. It's almost like the camouflage was just different, but it was the same base experience. And that utterly fascinated me, and I started digging further into the UFO field, which I was already interested in. And then really kind of like shifted my whole understanding of it when I read Kenneth Ring's Omega Project, where he compares the abduction experience and the near-death experience. And from there, I've slowly kind of taken this stuff apart and put it back together in different ways, trying to understand what we're really experiencing.
Okay, wow. I'm getting a little bit of feedback here, so I'm not sure. I guess you called in on Skype, so but we're making our way through this. Pardon?
It should be clear. It's usually clearer than my cell phone reception.
Yeah, it's just Blog Talk has a weird correlation with different things. But anyway, we're okay. I can hear you. Sometimes I get it gets a little bit wonky. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, and I know you have more. So, but I wanted to address some of these things before we get too far. So the Kundalini experience. I'm a former Tantra teacher, and I think Andrew. So we're both kind of exposed to it. I had a Kundalini awakening around 1989-90. When I encountered a man that was able to astrally project to me, and I said, sure. He asked permission. I said, sure, go ahead, you can touch me. And when he approached me astrally, I had a Kundalini awakening. And then and mine was pleasant, though, because he was approaching me with a sexual energy, and I did say yes, so it wasn't a rape. It was, okay, consensual. I'm a Aquarian. I'm very experiential. Like I say, I'm a scientist, bad scientist. Like, sure, you can do that. Yeah, right. Let's see. And so when he did approach me, which he didn't let me know when it was going to be, and I won't go into great detail because it's very sexual, but I started having the like the movement like a snake, and then I was like shaking and vibrating. And to me, it was very pleasant. I didn't have any fear or any negative connections. And then we were just communicating via the internet on email at Penn State University. I'm sure they'd be pissed if they knew I was studying letters across the world about Kundalini awakening. And I said, what is that? And he said, Kundalini. I never heard the word before. I was at State College, went to the university bookstore, and thank God they're pretty expansive, right? So went over and they had a couple books that had Kundalini, and I started reading up on it. And I said, yeah, that's it. And then I just said, okay, do it again. Because and I probably was cheating on my husband at that point because, it's like I'm trading sexual energy with a man. I'm in Pennsylvania and he's in Hawaii. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have done that. But, I'm a mad scientist, and it's like, that was magical to me. Whoa. Uh-huh.
Well, sure.
So I wanted to ask Andrew, did you ever have a Kundalini awakening? What was your experience like?
See, I don't know exactly what it is. I have a feeling that I have had a Kundalini. I don't know if it's the same thing or similar to anointing, like being Christed, but if that's the case, I experience it all the time. Now, I remember back years ago when what's that?
It might be. There's a lot of cultures that have similar ideas. I just, the first one I came across was the Kundalini concept. So
I know that I at the drop of a dime I can experience the Christ energies going right through my body. And years ago, and a number of times with Sai Baba, with Amachi the Hugging Saint, with Maitreya Buddha, I've experienced an energy that just went right straight through my spine, and I was sitting up straight, my back was straight, and I had a big smile on my face, like from ear to ear, like no tomorrow, and I could just feel the energy just pouring through me. I don't know if it's the same thing as that or not. I remember years ago I was living in Sedona, and I was at a gym, and this guy and this woman were doing something. I don't know. They were doing some kind of a meditation or yoga or something. And assumably she went through this Kundalini awakening thing, and this guy literally took her with her, and he treated her. I don't know. It sounded like a bunch of crock to me, because I think it was just some kind of thing to maybe entice me to have him be my teacher. I don't know, but I just thought he was full of it, so I just left it at that. And that was the last of Kundalini that I experienced in person, other than through myself. And again, I still don't. Well, it says right here, it was a blissful state, which I've experienced a number of times, and I can, like I said, at a drop of a dime, experience it. Just calling in the energy. So I can't. I don't know what to compare it to. So it's like that.
It's probably connected to the same type of energy.
I'm suspecting so, but again, until I actually know or see somebody experience it in its authenticity, then I don't know. I still don't know what it is exactly.
Right.
It says right here, Kundalini is a concentrated energy of awareness or attention. A Kundalini awakening is a process of purification of our bodies and psyches, so that we're strong enough to embody the divine in this life. As the Dalai Lama says, the meaning of life is to embody the transcendent. So that's what. And there's various other definitions here, but again,
Seriah,
it sounds to me like
a
blissful state.
Right. So, Seriah, when you were growing up, what kind of religion were you raised in? I was raised Christian, so I tended as a young person to filter it through Christianity, but I rejected it very young too. So it's being illogical. I mean, a lot of the aspects of it. So, I don't know, what religion were you raised in, and what were you embracing at the time of your Kundalini awakening when you were around 12?
Well, I wasn't particularly religious. My parents considered themselves Christians, but they weren't practicing Christians. It was more, this is what you're supposed to be type of a thing.
Mhm.
So I never really got much exposure to religion at all. I know I had developed a severe fear of death early on because our dog had died, and when I had, I was a very little kid at the time, maybe 4 years old, 5 years old. It's one of my earliest memories. And I didn't understand what happened to the dog, of course, because I hadn't had any exposure to such a thing. And my mother said, well, close your ears and close your eyes, and that's what death's like forever. And that scared the hell out of me. And so obviously not a very Christian viewpoint. And it took a long time for me to shake that fear of death. Before I really started looking into things and started, kind of questioning things on my own and realized that was kind of a ridiculous idea.
Got it.
Yes. So then I want to go back to your story. So you were looking at Wicca. I haven't really studied Wicca. But you got like twitching cramps and pulsating energy. What were you doing that you got that kind of response?
That was the Kundalini. That just happened. It still happens.
Oh, that was just more the Kundalini. Okay, so I'm still.
Yeah, that was because of the Kundalini. That had nothing to do with the Wicca.
Now, did you have any sexual experiences with the Kundalini, or was it? So we have people like priests that have had Kundalini awakenings. It's very unexplained what happens, what is the catalyst that causes it to awaken. Theoretically, it's that you're ready for it. It wouldn't awaken unless you're ready for it. So on some level, your soul was ready to have the experience, from my understanding.
Right.
But I don't know everything. Yeah.
And Kundalini works its way into things like Tantra very, very smoothly once you understand what it is, once you understand how to use it, Because that energetic level of sex is really powerful, as I'm guessing you know from your experiences.
Oh, yeah. And if you can harness it, you can travel the universe, let me tell you. I got involved with it intensely, and I started learning with the breath and the energy and going into an orgasmic state. Orgasm is the same as like a spiritual experience when you get into the same level. It's like you were saying that you were comparing abduction and near death. So I'm really curious about all that because I've been out of body. I've been able to travel astrally. I've been able to remote view. I've been able to go out of body in the Kundalini experience. So, highly sexually charged and then I've been able to describe what's going on, kind of like channeling, but I'm not really channeling. I'm really describing what's happening. So what you went into, what is this Omega project, and you're comparing abduction and near death?
Okay, so Kenneth Ring, Dr. Kenneth Ring, was a near-death researcher. I forget what university he worked out of. But after his book, the Heading Toward Omega, came out, someone handed him a copy of Whitley Strieber's Communion and told him to take a look at it. And initially he dismissed it and said, I don't do UFO abduction. And they said, read the book. And so he broke down and he read the book and realized how many similarities there were between people who had near-death experiences and people who had what they felt were abduction experiences. So he collected a group of people together, some who had abductions, some who had near-death experiences, and a bunch who had none, to give him his control group. And he found that the people who had near-death experiences and the people who had what they thought were abduction encounters had the same after effects versus the people who didn't have either experience, who had none of those effects. One of those effects also is a Kundalini awakening. People who have near-death experiences or who have had abduction experiences often have awakened Kundalini afterwards.
Interesting.
So,
because Whitley said, I saw him on stage somewhere, and he said that some of his, people that he's worked with described having experiences with the dead, like their deceased relatives, when they were on board craft.
Right. So there's a strong
you?
interconnection there. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what broke me out of the idea of thinking that the abduction experience had anything to do with aliens, and led me toward looking at it as a more spiritual experience.
Yeah, that's what Travis Walton described as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I think it's all the above. It's interesting when people go either or, and I go, well, it's all the above. You know, to me, it's like it's all connected, all interconnected. Because I've had all the above, right? And so, when I had a near-death experience, it was a violent action, and I was suddenly out of body. I was with my guides, and they said, well, what timeline do you want to go down? And, you know, here's what can happen if you go down A, B, C, or D. And then I was given a choice, and I came back. When I was 4 and I was taken on board a mothership and then shown 25 timelines, it was the same energy for me. And they were saying, well, which timeline do you want to experience? Which multiverse? I was given a choice, and then they determined to the Earth. But that's my personal experience. But I just wondered. Mm-hmm. So that's my conclusion. But everybody has their own conclusions. So
right. And the fact that those experiences are so similar tell me that we're dealing with something that has the same base but uses different camouflage.
To me, it seems
just
like a vibratory frequency. Like it's a vibratory frequency. So I'm accessing the same frequencies where the dead are, you know. With the UFOs, it might be just right outside in the same frequency where the dead are.
And I've also, one of the ideas I always like playing around with is that when we see UFOs, it's because we're in an area that has some kind of unusual energy going on. And some of us are obviously more sensitive to that type of energy, and that the light in the sky aspect might be nothing more than an effect of that energy, kind of like an earth light, but it transitions into something more because we're in an altered state of consciousness, and then we can interact with something else.
Well, that's interesting. You say we're in an altered state of consciousness. So is it like taking a sacrament and it's like, I think there's an element of the DMT awakening, which you might encounter if you take an entheogen or something, that you're opening portals of perception, you're opening doorways. Is that what you're finding, something
sort
like
of.
that?
Yeah, like that type of an altered state. One of the things I find interesting about abductions as well, the gray alien archetype. I mean, it was not a major thing until Communion and Missing Time came out. Then it started becoming a more common archetype. You saw it here and there. However, people who take ayahuasca see grays. You find gray images on the walls of cave paintings from tens of thousands of years ago. Mm-hmm. And we know that those were often made by shamans on shamanistic journeys. So we have two situations where we see grays in altered states of consciousness connected with some kind of shamanistic awakening, and then you have the abduction experience. So it makes me wonder if what these people are really experiencing when they're, quote, abducted is actually a shamanistic awakening, but our culture is kind of hijacking it and turning it into an alien abduction encounter.
Well, as an abductee, contactee experiencer, I've had 3D experiences. I've had experiences where they've taken me out through the window, right through materials. I've had them with somebody else that has total recall. I've had it with somebody else that didn't recall anything. And, I'm still, as an experiencer, going, I'm not sure what's going on all the time. Right. Are they taking me astrally? Am I going physically? I've been returned with markings. I have acute sinus from an implant that somebody showed me on an X-ray in my skull, which they weren't going to operate on. So I don't know. It feels very real. But what is real?
Yeah.
Are we real when we're dead? It's the same thing. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
It is real. It's just not this real. I've often heard it described as, like, especially with near-death states, as being realer than real.
As someone that's had many near-death experiences, it feels realer than real. Yeah, it feels like this is the illusion.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, people, when I say altered states, I'm not saying that people are hallucinating. It's just another level of reality. In that altered state, we can perceive things we can't normally perceive in this reality.
Right. It opens the door of perception. So perhaps what's happening when you're, well, you know, I'm a psychotherapist, and my husband's trained by Stan Groff, right? So he went through years of studying with Stan Groff. He was there with John Mack when John Mack was going through training. They were in the same, Dr. Lessin and Dr. Mack were in the same class with Stan Groff, and they were doing, you know, they were participating in these workshops, intensive, like a week, 2 weeks at a time. But I just forgot the point I was going to make. But anyway, Stan Groff said that he encounters all these things in there. So they go into the holotropic and the hydrotropic. They go into near death, past life, birth canal, you know, alternative realities. So people in the holotropic breathwork field, I would recommend getting into some of their books, have the same experiences that people have in the life after death and life between lives and in the UFO reality. So, you know, what is reality? Are there these dimensions that we can travel between? And, you know, is that any less real than anything else? Just because of different dimensions doesn't mean it isn't real, right? I don't know. That's my thought.
Right, exactly. And I think that dichotomy of real, not real, comes from the more scientific materialist culture that we have now, where it's like if you can't scientifically measure it, it's not real. But experiences are really the most real thing we ever encounter.
Yes. So, tell me more about your conclusion. Or go ahead, Nancy. You have a question. Your turn.
Yeah. So, what kind of projects do you got going on now? I can't. So how do you say Seriah? How do you say your name? Seriah. I don't know why I'm having a hard time, but anyhow. So, I mean, do you do paranormal investigations? Are you doing research? What's going on with you now?
I don't really do paranormal investigations. I do, like, to me, there's plenty of evidence that something is going on out there. So, like, if you go on a ghost hunt, for instance, you know, things like EVPs or getting different bits of evidence there's tons of it out there, but it doesn't actually tell us what the phenomena is. I like talking to people, getting their different experiences. I like getting different experiences from people. I like to, you know, I still have my own magical practice and spiritual practices. Like last week, I was out at a haunted graveyard that I've been at many, many times. And we weren't trying to record any evidence. We were just trying to see if we could experience anything there. It wasn't, you know, let's get a camera and all this other stuff. I think the stuff responds better when it's responding to you and you're not trying to capture evidence.
Got it. Are you still being abducted or what's going on with that?
I've never had an abduction experience. I've had experiences where I was pulled astrally out of my body, which left marks on me. I've had experiences that are similar to the abduction experience, but I've always been in control of them, and they've never appeared as aliens. I usually deal with things that look like shadows.
Got it. So are you saying? Are you saying entities? Is that what you're saying?
Probably. I'm not totally sure this stuff all doesn't come from us.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I don't think there's any way to determine whether that's the case or not. You know, we all this paranormal stuff might be some element of our higher self, but there's no way to make that determination because it would seem like it's coming from the outside.
I hear you. And so, what I hear you saying is that possibly our own psyche or subconscious, conscious, superconscious could be creating a lot or all the paranormal activity that you're talking about. Is that what I hear you saying?
Right. So, like, if someone's getting an EVP, how do we know that EVP is coming from a spirit and not from that person's latent psychic abilities implanting on the recorder? Especially when you see that people who do ghost hunting regularly get more and more EVPs as they go, suggests to me it might, at least in some cases, be coming from them. That without realizing it, they're psychically imprinting on that recorder. I think when you're looking at when you're looking at the Bigfoot field, we've quoted a term that we call the wilderness poltergeist. And when you look at people who go out Bigfoot hunting, you find that the most common things they experience are thrown rocks, vocalizations, knocks. These are all elements that you will see in poltergeist cases, like to a T. They're like the dead-on poltergeist activity. So I wonder if what's happening is these people in that state of mind, getting out into the wilderness where there's more energy, are literally creating poltergeists around them without realizing it.
Well, that kind of ties into the theory that we're creating all of this. And I'm going to have a guest on. He says, this is all our creation. That's why you have to be careful what you think and what you believe, because it's all the law of attraction and action.
And I think that's true. Personally, I do think there are other things out there that we interact with, but I think some of it is entirely us.
I hear you. And there's no reason why it couldn't be.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And even when I have poltergeist encounters, like I'll have little outbursts of poltergeist activity around me, I assume it's coming from me. It's coming from the Kundalini and my energy, but I'll still treat it like an external entity since I'm not causing it directly, like consciously. So I'll be like, hey, stop that, don't do that, to get it to stop, because obviously I'm not in control of it, even if it is coming from me.
So it's good to do that exercise and, like, don't overthink it. Just, just do it. It might be me, it might be something else.
And I don't know that there's any way for us to tell whether it's us or something else. I mean, it would appear the same to us, you know.
And that does show us that we don't have to play victim.
Yeah. And I think a lot of negative experiences are brought on by fear. I think the phenomena sort of responds to how you deal with it. So if something happens and it makes you afraid, then your experience is more negative. And I think John Mack showed that really well when he did his research and showed that there are plenty of positive abduction experiences. And it's about how people approach them.
Well, they also get a different experience if they go to a different facilitator. So if you go, and I'm not going to name names, but there's some that approach this whole abduction phenomenon as a negative, right? That these are species that are trying to take over the planet. And when you go to those facilitators, those hypnotherapists, then you tend to have the experiences that they have with other, they seem to have the same type of experiences, right? Are they directing or facilitating or somehow affecting your experiences? Why, you have to be very careful with your facilitator to remain neutral and, get out of the process. Just be the witness and help the person carry with them as they journey.
The other problem is hypnosis is not a good memory recovery tool, no matter how good the hypnotist is. Without having something to verify it, it's impossible to know if you're actually recovering memories. Jenny Randall's really good UFO investigator from the UK, in investigating hypnosis, she had something that happened to her in her childhood, and she didn't remember most of it. She only remembered a few bits of it. So she said, okay, this data exists. I know what happened, but I don't. So hypnotize me and let's see if you can of memory. And what she found is that stuff that she did remember was recalled accurately under hypnosis, but the stuff she didn't remember was completely wrong. Like when they checked up afterwards and said, okay, let's see how your hypnotically regressed memories compared to the actual information, they were two completely different things. And she said, you can't trust hypnosis to be accurate because with, these type of experiences, we have no way of verifying them. Also, hypnosis
we have no way
being
to
an altered
verify
state.
life.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I'm sorry.
Too.
You said like.
It's also possible, however, that hypnosis being an altered state, that what we think is recovered memories we might be having an actual experience under hypnosis.
Well, have you ever heard of Dolores Cannon?
Yes, we have.
The name rings a bell.
Yeah,
you don't know Dolores Cannon?
Yeah,
she used to hypnotize people, and eventually, what happened was she started being contacted by assumably aliens through her clients, and so. But regardless of circumstance, what I understand is that they've been able to have or heal. A lot of people have been able to be healed of all kinds of stuff, or chronic stuff or whatever, on a number of occasions through hypnosis. So I don't know how that happened, but I know there's hundreds and hundreds of cases out there where people have been healed of all kinds of stuff through hypnosis. So does that make sense to you?
Yeah, hypnosis works great for that type of stuff. I mean, it can, for behavior modification and for mind over matter type of stuff, hypnosis works. It's just not necessarily a good tool for memory.
So what we do in our practice is we don't worry about the ontological status, whether it's accurate or not, because it's not a court of law and somebody's going to hang because of our, testimony, right? We look at it as is it helpful? Does it bring about something?
Yes.
So so I've had incidences that I've recovered in hypnosis. I have no way of ever verifying any of the details because all the people are dead, right? So I can't get bogged down in the details. I just have to. Actually, the whole concept is we're making it up, and that time is fluid too. So even if you recall hypnosis, something happened in the past, you can actually change the past or the future because everything's fluid. That's one of the things that quantum physics are covering. That there's nothing set in stone.
Right.
So
I agree with that.
But that was an interesting experiment that she had. Yeah.
Even if you're remembering something that's not accurate, but it does help you resolve something in your life, that experience might be presented because you needed to resolve something, and it helped you do that through the hypnosis, through a memory that may not have actually happened, but turns out to be useful to you. That's very much a thing.
Yeah, I was interviewing one of the Allagash Four, and the one guy says that he didn't have any experiences, any recollection, and so he thought the other three were lying. And it's like, well, wait, you have four people. All four had different experiences. Just because yours is not the same doesn't mean anybody's intentionally lying.
Right.
It's really difficult to prove any of this. I always say I can't prove a single solitary thing. I can't even prove I'm alive. I could be imagining this conversation I'm having with people on a radio show right now.
So one of the weirdest experiences I had, we were up on the edge of this potter's field that overlooked the lake. It was like a cliff. And three of us were standing on one side of this cliff, and down along the cliff, far on the other side, was one of our other friends. And while we're standing there, we start hearing this like thump, 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 and the tree right behind us starts shaking vigorously. And you couldn't see through it because the bush was too thick. But I'm thinking there's a buck there, a deer, running its horns against the the tree, because that's what it sounded like, and that's what it felt like. You could feel the vibration on the ground, like it was stomping on the ground. And I'm like, holy crap. And my other friend's like, what the hell is that? And I'm like, I don't know. And so I walk down the trail a little bit till I can see the other side of the bushes, and there's nothing there, and everything just stops. And I walk back, and it starts doing it again. And I'm like, huh. And so I walk back again, and it stops. And I walk, at this point, all the way out to the field, and I look around. It's a big open field, and there's nothing there. So I walk back to where my friends are, and it starts shaking again. And my one friend is freaking out about this because there's clearly something there, and yet I'm not finding anything. It's not like something could have hid. And our other friend finally says something along the lines of, what are you guys talking about? We're like, the tree's shaking. He's like, the tree's not moving. And we both just kind of stopped and looked at him, and we're like, really? And he's like, I'm not seeing anything. It's like, you don't hear that? You don't feel that? No. He's like, no. And he's freaking out because they're telling him this and that, and we're not messing with him. And our other friend's just sitting over there chilling on the other side of the trail, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, can we just go now? And it's like, yeah, okay, let's do that. But, I sat there and I realized, okay, two of us had this experience. It was a very distinct experience. And our other friend was experiencing something completely different. And he was someone who had experiences when he was around me, like stuff would happen when he was around. So he wasn't somebody who would block this stuff out normally. So why didn't he have that experience? And I think that, our realities are all a little bit different because our brains interpret things in certain ways and choose which data we see and what's really going on around us. So I don't think there's one reality. I think we have an agreement most of the time on what's going on. But I do think, like, that experience said to me, like, whatever this was showing me that it's literally possible to have two different experiences at the same time.
Yeah, I remember when I was 16, we were talking about consensus reality, and and it was blowing my mind. And it's like, yeah, we actually have, what's our population? 7 billion different realities, and every once in a while we have a consensus reality and we can agree on things. But I've seen that phenomenon over and over again. Like, I used to have outdoor, sleepovers, and we'd call in crap. This is back in the 60s, before Stephen Greer, right? And I'd say, you want to see a UFO? Come on out here. So,
right.
Not everybody would see it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not much you can do about it. You don't see it, we're all seeing it. So, yeah.
Right. I had an experience. I had a girlfriend at one point who also had rampant Kundalini issues. And I and a friend of ours were walking through that same haunted graveyard. And as we're walking through, we started getting surrounded by these tiny little lights. They were just almost swarming us like insects would. And they were multicolored, all primary colors. And I noticed it, and then after a moment, she looks at me and goes, are you seeing this? And I said, yeah. And then we looked at our friend and went, are you seeing these lights? And he went, what lights? And we just kind of were like, oh, okay.
So what do you do with all this information? This is fascinating. Yeah.
Well, I think it shows, if it was just me seeing the lights, I'd say, okay, well, maybe I'm hallucinating. Maybe I'm imagining it. But when someone else can confirm what you're seeing and only one other person can't see it, it tells me that reality, like I said, it just isn't the same for everyone. And it could be in some cases people are blocking stuff out or they're not open to it, or something is literally not presenting itself to everybody.
It's like an elephant. We all have a different piece of this elephant.
Right, exactly.
And some people don't even have a piece of the elephant at all. They go, what elephant?
I don't see an elephant.
I don't see an elephant. Well,
I see a pink giraffe. Just kidding. Never mind.
Just kidding.
Never mind. Just kidding.
Don't haul me away. Don't haul me away. Well,
right.
sometimes somebody's reality can really affect you. No, well, they don't do it so much as they did before. Back in the I don't know how old you are, but back in the day, back in the 60s, if you were hallucinating, they could lock you up.
Oh, yeah.
Now they just set you out in the street and you're homeless.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's one of the most interesting paranormal experiences you've ever had in your life? Seriah?
Well, the one with the shaking tree is up there on the list.
Okay.
I had a really weird one where I had walked. I have a fairly decent amount of property. About at the time it was like 6 acres worth of land, and I'm in the country, so it's very, very dark when we go outside at night. And I would take walks at night regularly. And I had walked out way in the back of my property where it's pitch black, so I could look at the stars, and it was a full moon too. And when I got out there, I realized in the field behind my house there was a light, and that light shouldn't have been there. Like it was in the middle of this big open field, or like where corn is normally planted. And I'd look at the light, and I would go out, and then I'd start kind of walking around the area, and then the light would come back. And I noticed that I started timing it after a while, and the light would go on and off, like it would be on for 7 seconds, off for 7 seconds. But if I was watching it, it would turn off and stay off until I looked away. I could only watch it out of the corner of my eye. And I thought, well, that's really interesting because it implies it's interacting with me in some way because it knows when I'm looking at it. At the same time, I watched the moon as it slowly got covered with clouds. The moon kind of popped through the clouds and started shaking. And I looked at that and I said, that's not possible. That must be an optical illusion. And I looked away, and I looked back. The moon was normal, and then it popped through the clouds again. I'm going, all right, what the hell is going on? Because that's obviously not real. The moon cannot be on this side of the clouds. At the same time, I was also getting these bright flashes of light that was lighting up the entire area. Someone like take a flashlight picture, where it would be a sudden brightness that would then fade down. I'd be able to see everything in the landscape. And for a long time, this experience just really puzzled me. As subtle as it was, I had absolutely no explanation for it. But now I suspect it has something to do with some kind of earth energy or something being presented from the earth that was actually affecting my consciousness and allowing me to see these things. Whether or not it was a planned thing, that something was trying to make contact in some way, I don't know. But for a long time, it just thoroughly puzzled me. Because to say that the moon popped through the clouds sounds absolutely crazy, and it was. You know,
right.
Like I don't do drugs, I don't do hallucinogens, so I mean there was nothing that should have caused me to see that. Nor am I prone to seeing things like that. It was a very one-off situation. I was just like, yeah, that's not possible. All right.
Well, what part of the world were you in when you saw that?
What was that?
Where were you when you saw that? What part of the world?
Right where
when
I am now, upstate New York.
Upstate New York. So it looked like the moon, but it wasn't the moon. Because the moon can't pop in below the clouds.
Right, and I don't, I guess I never really thought about whether or not it was actually the moon. I just knew what I was seeing wasn't possible. I assumed my brain was somehow putting the moon in front of the clouds. Like it was interpreting what I was seeing differently for some reason.
And was anybody else with you?
No.
You were alone?
I was alone, yeah.
I hate when things happen when you're alone. I like having witnesses. I would say,
and I've had a lot of
do you see? What do you see? Do you
and I've
see
had a
what
lot of
I see?
experiences. I've had a lot of experience with other people. But some of the stuff just happens by myself. And, to me, like I said, I'm not all that interested in proving things. I'm interested in understanding why they happen. Because a lot of
so
most
what's your
people
theory?
have experiences. Huh?
What do you think? Why did it happen? What's your theory about that episode? Why did it happen? You said somebody was trying to communicate with you.
Yeah, I think there was some sort of communication. And maybe the whole point was just to make me realize there was something trying to communicate. You know?
Have you seen ghosts?
The same way that I have never seen ghosts. I've seen shadows. I've had poltergeist activity. I've never seen anything I would qualify as a ghost. I've gotten the sense of dead pets around. To the point where, like our last dog used to lay in the room in a very specific way, and our one cat would give this dog a really weird look. It's the only time this cat has ever given anything this look. And we were sitting here a few days after the dog, we had to put the dog to sleep, and we were watching something on TV, and I said, I feel like the dog's right there. And my ex was like, I don't feel anything. I'm like, I don't know. It's just a really strong feeling. And then I said, now I feel like she just crawled over to us like she would normally do. And at that moment, the cat walked into the room, started to walk over to us, and gave that to that space next to the dog was. And my ex, it was really her dog, she just burst out crying. Because, like, that cat never did that any other time except to that dog.
Yeah, I had a pet fox that I lived in grew up in a haunted house, and I had a pet fox that would be sleeping, and all of a sudden it would jump up and start snapping at the air, and we go, what's going on? And it would, something was engaging it, but we couldn't see it.
Yeah. I had one of my cats refuse to leave the back part of the house for 3 days. She would look out the door toward the rest of the house and just be terrified and run and hide. And it was like, what is going on?
Poor thing.
And then she never did it again. Once she got over it, she was fine. It never happened again, but it was just so weird.
If only they could speak. Okay, so you talk about comparative religion on your bio. Tell us about that. What are you comparing?
I wasn't religious growing up. And when I started looking at different things, I found it interesting to compare different religions, different religious practices. And I think I've come down to, I like the way Alistair Crowley put it, where he said, God is the same mountain. It's named different things by different people, viewed from different sides, with different paths to the top, but it's still the same mountain. So I like looking at like the similarities, especially when you get into the very ancient forms of religion, how so much of this stuff looks like it came from the same source, and it's just been modified as they went along. And a lot of that too makes you wonder if the same source was a lost civilization that existed prior to the end of the life. So, for instance, if you look at the basic tenets of Christianity, you find a lot of similarity to Buddhism. And now there's more and more you're seeing these things come out because there's actually legends of Christ being in India at one point, during that whole point where there's no Christian, where the Christian history doesn't have any record of where he was. So I almost feel like, did he go to India and bring back a westernized version of Buddhism?
So, I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. So, you're looking at the Indian version of Christ's the journey. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
I have some studying that right now. Yeah, how Buddha and how Christ went to India and studied the Buddhist stuff or something like that. I don't know. I'm waiting to read his book. He's working on the book, and he hasn't surrendered it to me yet. So he's done, Because he's an anthropologist, psychologist, and we've written 4 books on the Anunnaki, so this is the 5th one. So
wow.
Get it to me, and then I'll weave my magic on it. When we have you on the next show, we'll have Dr. Lessin. You guys can talk about lost civilizations and that type of stuff. But say that again because you broke up, and I couldn't quite make out what you were saying about. So try that one more time. Yeah.
So it's basically that I suspect that there is a base religion that a lot of these ancient cultures built off of that was probably pre-flood, pre-end of the Ice Age. And then it has broken up and been changed in different ways over time because that's what happens. And I was just using like the Christianity Buddhism connection as a good example of that in more modern times, where I think whoever Christ was, whether he was one person or multiple people, I think that he was someone who went to India, learned the tenets of Buddhism, and tried to bring it back to the West, but he westernized it a little bit because it wouldn't have gone over in the West the same way it did in India.
And that's what my husband, Dr. Husband, concluded. But I haven't interviewed him yet because he's still in his creative process. So I let him go until he reaches the end of his studies and his writings. But hopefully by the time we have him on the next show, he'll have that in the can. And well, he's going to talk about it anytime. But yeah. Well, what about you, Andy? You went over to India for a while. Did you follow the Christ Buddha connection?
Twice over. In a way, yes. The Sai Baba came to me in a dream and invited me to visit him. So I did. I went there for almost 2 months and hung out and checked him out, and then I came back, and then I went back again later on, about what was it, 6 years later. And Amachi, the Hugging Saint, I don't know if you know who she is, but she had a big birthday bash. I've heard of her, but I've never met her. Yeah, she had a big birthday bash, her 50th birthday party, and so I went there for that, and I was there for only about a couple of weeks, but both times were very interesting experiences. I can say that for sure.
So did you study the
people there who are...
What's that?
Go ahead, somebody. Go ahead, Seriah, you first.
Oh, I was going to say you're dealing with people who have very large amounts of energy, so I'm sure they were very interesting experiences, no matter how you want to classify them.
Exactly. Like I experienced, I witnessed Sai Baba producing vibhuti. People came up to me and showed me green diamonds and blue diamonds that he manifested for them, rings in the form of rings or earrings or both. I mean, all kinds of experiences that I had there. It was just pretty just a paranormal experience. I'm pretty sure. So,
what do you think he's doing when he pulls? What do you, both of you? What do you think when somebody like Sai Baba? And I had someone tell me about this church that they would go to, and it was somewhere I think in Arizona, where the horn would fly around the room and jewelry would land in people's. They would like deliver things to people. This floating horn, and then they would get it analyzed, and it was 5,000-year-old ring or something like that. What do you think is happening when those things are happening with people like this? Sai Baba. Either of you.
Well, what it is. It's not about the miracles or the paranormal activities taking place. What it is, it's grabbing your attention to be able to, so that you can turn around and focus on who you are, where you're at, and focus on being in the present. So they're just, all they are is magic tricks per se, if you want to call them that, to get your attention to really focus on being who you are, and I mean, and that's what people go when you go to the ashram, to his ashram. You're not there to people get misunderstand all the time. People go there to socialize, but it's not about socializing. It's about being on the path and being in your and doing your practices. So that and people go there and they think, oh well, this is all about socialization, but it's a lot more than just socialization. It's there to focus on you and being in your power. So that's what that's all about.
And in Buddhism, if I'm not mistaken, the idea of these special powers, if I'm pronouncing it right, it's siddhas. they're more side effects of enlightenment than anything else, and they're not supposed to be focused on.
Yeah, and I specifically went there for an initiation, to be initiated, which I didn't understand until later on, and I didn't make that. I didn't have that realization until later on. But it was a very unique experience, and I can't say I regret it. I can't say it was a bad experience. I can't say it was an incredibly glamorous experience, because it actually really wasn't. It was just, again, it was a very, I think maybe humbling is a good word, a very interesting paranormal experience, because there was so much that happened there that I don't think some of it I probably wouldn't experience anywhere else in the world or in the universe maybe, but it was just my own personal experience, and a lot of people may have experienced similar stuff, and there's a lot of people that will probably never experience any of the stuff that I experienced there. So it's pretty unique. I can say that for sure.
So, Seriah, so we're looking back at the Kenneth Ring. He's a near-death. Did we complete that thread? I'm kind of taking loose notes here, so we make sure we get through all this. Did you meet Kenneth Ring, or you had just studied him? Yeah, did we complete that?
Kenneth, I have never met Kenneth Ring. I've tried to get him on my show a few times, but he really doesn't do interviews anymore. Unfortunately, but like I said, that book just kind of changed my life and the way I look at this stuff. That combined with Jacques Vallée's Dimensions, where he compares, the UFO experience to so many other paranormal experiences, everything from the fairy faith to like the Fatima, Virgin Mary experiences. And he shows all these connections underneath it all. That kind of woke me up to the fact that this was much bigger than just aliens flying in nuts and bolts craft over to kidnap us.
Well, I like aliens. I mean, I like it all. I like ghosts. I like aliens. I think it's all something to do. People symbol things different. It's like having different religions and different belief structures, and I never make anybody wrong or bad or try to invalidate their truth, as long as they're not hurting anybody. No raping children.
Right,
that type
exactly.
of thing. So. So anyway,
and that's the thing.
I need to read these books. Yeah.
I think that we all experience. None of us have the same experience of reality as anyone else. Even twins don't have the exact same experience. We have different experiences. That forms different type of realities for us. So it's impossible for us to say that someone else's reality is wrong. We may disagree. We may have different information. We may have different experiences, but it's a personal thing. Reality is really a very personal thing. And again, like you said, as long as you're not hurting anyone, I don't really see why people have to try and make everyone else's reality the same as theirs. It's almost an insecurity, especially when you look at the people who call themselves skeptics, who are actually just debunkers. And they want to tear people down. And there was an article we talked about on the air recently, where they were talking about psi research, and this guy was criticizing this article on psi research, and he said, "Well, I'm not even going to look at the data because I know the data's wrong. I know this stuff doesn't exist, so I'm not going to look at it." And this was in the Skeptic and Inquirer, and we were like, "Okay, so you're basically admitting that you're basically choosing your own beliefs, rather than looking at the data." But yet you're taunting yourself as, "I'm a skeptic. I look at the data."
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to look at people that are open-minded and those who are closed-minded. I like remaining open-minded because I have a much bigger life and broader experience of this, dance we have as human beings, right? if I close my mind, it seems like the more open-minded I am, the more I see. So maybe I'm in some kind of lifelong hallucination. I don't know, but my life is extremely magical and rich compared to, I have people. I'm from Pennsylvania, and they can be pretty closed-minded, and I just think how sad you're locked in this little tiny world, this little reality, and you'll never see it. You'll see things when you believe it, a lot of times when you open your mind. So, anyways, it's just another. And of course, it's valid. If you want to be scientific or closed out and just always looking that way, then. But I'm looking for solutions for all this stuff, because we have this mass psychosis that apparently is coming off kind of negatively. I don't know. Is the planet really dying? I can't even tell you what reality is based on the news, because it's all fake news, real news, alternative news, alternative realities. What's really going on? What do you think is going on?
So much of the news is just propaganda at this point. They have become so good on both sides at kind of manipulating the public. They know what works. They know how to get people to believe what they want them to believe. As far as the planet dying, I think the planet's going to be just fine. Whether or not it's hospitable to us or not is a completely different question. I do think there are natural cycles that are being ignored because the whole climate change thing has been so political. I have no doubt that, everything affects everything else. So I have no doubt that stuff we do is affecting the climate. But we're also in a long-term warming trend. It's been happening for a very long time. It may have been set up by us, but the thing is, too, we're not necessarily going to be able to stop it. However, I look at it this way. If the solution to this stuff is cleaning up the planet, stopping pollution, stopping deforestation, none of that has a negative outcome to us. Even if it's not what's causing it, we should still do that. That all of that stuff is a positive thing for life on Earth, including us. The only people who don't care about that stuff are the ultra rich who feel like they don't have to worry about it.
Well, I think they're terraforming the planet to take it over for an alien race, and they've sold us all as a product, or they're going to package us up and sell it to enough. It doesn't make sense from a logic level. Why would you shit in your own, house and you got to live in it, right? They obviously are terraforming the planet for the reptilians. Obviously, come on,
Well, and that ultra elite, though, they don't care. It's all about themselves and how much money they can make. The money doesn't even mean what it does to the rest of us, because the rest of us need the money to survive. They don't. They've never needed to survive in a lot of cases. It's just a status symbol.
Yeah. What do you think, Andrew?
And then...
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Seriah.
Oh, I was going to say they don't look beyond their lifetime. They don't care what happens beyond their life. And a lot of people are like that. My parents were kind of like that. I had tried to get my parents to recycle more back in the 80s. And I'd say, look, the planet's going to be a mess if we don't start doing something about it. And my dad would say, well, it's not like I'm going to be here to worry about it. And it's like, wow, what a great attitude. Okay.
Thanks,
and then
Dad.
again, if we do reincarnate, maybe you will,
Well, isn't it interesting that nobody wants to take our recyclables? And certainly, I guess for how many years we've been just shipping it to China, and they're saying we're not taking your junk anymore. And so, what are we going to do with all this trash we're generating?
Yeah,
really,
well, it
has to be a problem.
Not generate trash. Not generating it in the first place is part of the answer.
Well, if you ever buy anything, do you see how much plastic and cardboard it's all wrapped in just because of the sex aspect, right? And so everything gets manufactured so you can't take it out the door. I guess it could all be tagged so the scanners would buzz, or something.
And with the electronics, so many of these companies make disposable electronics. I mean, Apple wants you to buy the new iPhone every year. They want you to just toss that old one and go buy a new one, rather, and that's incredibly wasteful. And the telephone companies are like that. Oh, he's coming out with new phones, and it's like, oh, you don't want that old piece of crap anymore. Come buy our new phone or get this new computer or whatever. And it's like, none of it's made to last. If you bought stuff back in the 70s or the 80s, the electronics lasted 10, 20 years. I mean, I have VCRs from the 80s that still work. But if you buy one now, 3 years down the line, you're lucky if it still works.
Built-in obsolescence.
This adds up to the amount of waste that we're experiencing on the planet. I mean, it's just, it's all consumer-based. It's all money-based.
It's all money-based. So, I study the extraterrestrials. I seem to have this exchange with extraterrestrials, and we're looking at social, economical, governance system, and they're called governments, right? Because they don't act like this. So what I'm getting as a contact the experiencer, they'll take it to their planet, and who knows? Am I making this up? I don't know. So I find myself frequently on other worlds, and I'm studying how they do things. And they think that how humans do things is absolutely insane. I mean, we can sit there and look and say how absolutely insane it is. It doesn't make sense. But they have basically, and everything gets labeled, so they basically have, I guess you call it a socialist society if you put it into human norms. But from their perspective, it's like absurd to have somebody come to the planet, born onto the planet, and you don't take care of their needs, right? So the whole society is based on needs and meeting needs. And when you meet needs, like you said, the poor people use money to buy what they need, right? They're not like hoarding it. Mm-hmm. They don't have extra. They have a different mentality. So they're looking at this is all, these resources belong to everybody, and we're here to meet needs. And so the higher level civilizations meet needs, and then they go into luxuries, right? Okay, well, now we've met all everybody's needs. Everybody has food, water, shelter. It's all clean. It's all healthy. Okay, there's medical. We have cures for all. I mean, they solve all the problems, meeting the needs, and then it's like, okay, what are the luxuries? Well, now we're going to move into art and music and dance because we have spare time. We don't have to spend all our time doing labor. And they just look at it completely different, and they look at us and they go, what? What are you guys doing? If you used all that energy that you put into war, but it's a system, looking at the Anunnaki that was put in place with the artificial shortages that we end up not meeting the needs. And if you meet needs, a planet does not have war. But we are not meeting needs, so we have war. So we end up spending trillions on war, but that system allows the hoarders, the ultra-rich, to hoard. So tap on personal wealth. So it is kind of socialism, a big deal, So what? It's a system that works. Stop labeling it and just find systems that work, that everybody gets their needs met. Otherwise, cross your legs to stop breeding everybody. If you're not going to meet the needs of people, why are we having a population that we can't support as a global society, correct? I mean, I'm looking at logically. I look at things logically. I'm Spock. What do you guys think? How do we meet the needs of this crazy planet? Just objectively, from the perspective.
I think it starts with the fact, there's so much money in politics that's all it's about. It's not about helping the people. And it has been so separated right to left. We're not looking at it like, okay, who has the best idea to help the most people? It has to be all or nothing on one side or the other. Because there are good ideas on both sides, and it just depends what we're we're talking about. I mean, we should be able to work together and say, no, that is a good idea, even if it doesn't come from your side of the equation, you know? Okay, so you're a conservative. It doesn't mean all liberal ideas are bad. And if you're a liberal, it doesn't mean all conservative ideas are bad. There's a balance in there. And some things work better from one side than the other.
I think it's crazy to label an idea to a party. Just have it as an idea.
Yes.
Here's an idea.
Yeah. Well,
what do you think of that idea?
But the fact that it's so diametrically opposed out there makes it impossible to really make any progress because it's all about, you know, whose side is winning. And in the end, they're all kind of the same. Right.
That's why it's obviously an alien agenda to divide and conquer humanity so they can take over the planet and harvest humanity and sell us off to the highest bidder in the Galactic Council or something. I mean, it makes sense on the human level.
Or if that was really true, that they would have taken over the planet a long time ago. Because they could at will take over the planet at any given time. I don't have any doubt in my mind about that. But that's not the agenda, and that's not the intention. And not only that, but that's not the universal karmic law. They abide by universal karmic law or universal law, and that means that they can't just come in and invade us and make us slaves. I don't think that's the case at all, not even for a second.
Well, I have a whistleblower who said that's exactly what happened. The universal law will not allow them to do this. So a faction has been. That's what this theory was. It was interesting. Okay, I'm open about it, right? I go, what's your theory? So I listened to it, and he said that that they have been working to trade us off and sell us off, and that's what this whole thing is. Like, come to the harvest, you know, and the rapture, you know, all that stuff is built into our religions. That's what that's about, like in preparation, or even the New Age stuff. They're going to welcome the ETs, right? So we're all going to be open-minded. Oh, yeah, we're going to go to the rapture. We're going to welcome ETs, and then that's the harvest. It's like they take us off. So, but what he said is that was the plan for a long time, but they, like you said, the universal, we had to have interference because there are dark forces that were studying that. It was an interesting theory. I entertained it. You know, I can't tell you it's true or not, but it was interesting. But then I looked at it logically. It's like, well, this doesn't make sense because we're destroying. I mean, that's a story. We're destroying the oceans. I don't know. I go down to the beach, and the waters are rising, right? So we're losing ground. So I like to do is what I conserve, right? And we're all in our different parts of the world. I haven't been out in the ocean, but I have friends who come back and said, yes, they've seen the seeds of plastic. But I personally haven't gone out to the ocean, right? How do we qualify this reality? How do we determine our reality? What's really going on to be effective?
Well, I mean, that's sort of an individualist sort of thing based on our experiences and what we've learned and what's happened to us and so on and so forth. I mean, the fact that we don't respect that to one another, I think, is a big problem. That we expect everyone should think the same way, you know, as we do. I've met so many people who have who can't talk to someone who has different ideas than them. Or they get angry because somebody thinks differently, and it's like, this is not helping anything. This is not how you progress.
Right.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people don't understand and realize. It don't matter how evolved aliens are, and they come into our space and walk amongst us and do all this stuff in our societies and our communities. But no matter who they are last one of them is subject to universal law. So they just can't come over and take over our space because sooner or later the karma is going to catch up with them. And that's why I really don't worry about them coming in and becoming public domain and doing the first contact and all this. A lot of people probably are scared because they think they're going to come over and run our world, but that's not there. That again, even if they do, the karma will catch up to them, and I don't think they're going to like it. I don't think they're going to like it for a second. So it's like that.
So, to change the subject a little bit,
Yes.
one of the ideas I've always found really fascinating. Well, I'll start with Robert Schoch's work. Robert Schoch normally does ancient civilization work. He's the one who confirmed the water damage on the Sphinx, showing that it was much older than the Egyptologists thought. But he also did a book on psychic abilities. And one of the things in that book that they discovered was that throughout the history of psi research, people being tested have scored better when there was high solar activity versus low solar activity. And one of the statements he made that I loved was he said, so either there's been a century-plus long hoax going on where psychics have agreed to only fake good results when the solar activity is high, or these results are genuine, based on, and it seems to be affected by what the sun is doing. We're being very affected by our environment. So one of the first people I had on the show was Walter Cruttenden. Well, actually, the first interview I ever did with Walter Cruttenden, it was actually on my music show as kind of a test to see if I could handle doing the interview. And Walter Cruttenden wrote a book called The Lost Star of Space and Time, I think it is. And it talks about us being in a binary star system and about the Great Year or the Yuga cycle and so on. And when you look at these ancient legends of the Yuga cycle and the Great Year, they talk about how we move through different levels of sort of ability. Like, so when we're in the Golden Age, we have very strong psychic abilities. We're almost like gods. And then we drop down. We have that fall down to the Dark Ages or the Kali Yuga, which we're just coming out of now, where everything is kind of materialistic and dark, and we don't have very strong psychic abilities and such. And this is something you see throughout different cultures. And combine that with the idea that this may be because we're in a binary star system, and you have to wonder, like, okay, so if our own sun just being more active enhances psychic ability, what if there's another star that moves closer to us, and when it does, it really ramps up our psychic ability? It puts us in that godlike state for as long as it's near us, and then as it starts moving away, we start losing it again, because there's something about the environment that interacts with us that allows these things to occur.
So I believe that no matter what, everyone has a psychic ability regardless. And so you're saying that certain transitions, whether it be solar or a star system or whatever, actually enhance those abilities or not. Is that what I hear you saying?
Right.
So I don't think that really matters. I mean, we're either going to use our psychic ability or not. Actively participate in working with them or not. And so, if we have some energy, solar system energy or whatever that enhances that, well, then more power to us so that we can utilize it, hopefully for the benefit of people, of ourselves. So, but otherwise, it's interesting to note that, because I've never heard of something like that before.
Well, I heard a theory that once we let me just say this and I'll pass the talking stick back. I heard a theory that once we reach the galactic core, there'll be an alignment through the Earth. It's just like the end of the Yuga, and there'll be a mass DMT activation. So that kind of ties in with the theory about the psychic abilities, and I guess some people are more naturally psychic than others, but we all have psychic abilities.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and then you were saying that he said that this is I agree, this is a binary system, that we have a dark star that's in a different, the ultraviolet range, as opposed to, but we're still a binary system, and even though it's a brown dwarf and it's in a different spectrum, it still is sufficient enough to more of Nibiru. So that's the whole theory that Sitchin does, that this is a binary star system, and that Nibiru is not just a planet, it's a whole second system of planets and sun and moons, and that the two rotate around each other. In fact, that's what they're finding, looking out to the galaxies, that most systems are binary systems. So that makes sense. And the warming up that we're experiencing, it might be because of the systems are interacting in a way that they're warming up. And so this is cyclical. It's about a 3,600-year cycle. That if you look, we don't see it because we're so short-lived. But if you're long-lived, you go, oh, that's just like, it's like summer, spring, fall, winter, right? But because we're so short-lived, we're going, like on the Game of Thrones, winter's coming, right? So that meant something different. That was like another cycle. Yeah.
So what I want to know is,
Walter,
are we a zero or a one? That's what I want to know.
No, the Carter Ship Show. We're not even a one yet. But go ahead. But what did Walter say?
Walter had suggested that it's actually the Seriah star system that we're in a binary relationship. There's a group called the Binary, what is it called? Binary Research Group, I think it is, and they've been studying Sirius for quite a while. And one of the things they found is that when Sirius B lines up with us, like so Sirius B goes around Sirius A, and when that lines up with us, the Earth's rotation slows just slightly while that happens, which implies there's some kind of connection there that really shouldn't be there, as far as like traditional science holds. So
why would you say that?
Why would the Earth rotate according to normal?
No, why would you say that there's a connection that shouldn't be there?
According to traditional science.
Okay,
so Sirius is moving toward us. It's moving toward us at just about the right speed. You have the Dagon tribes who talk about, details about the Sirius star system that they shouldn't have known. In the one of the things that in the ancient texts you find is that the Nibiru can sometimes be confused with Sirius. So there's a lot of
what I understand. What I understand, when I was in the Air Force, I was in a inertial navigation systems specialist study, and what it is that the indicators in the cockpit operate off of gyro systems, and gyro systems are these things that turn really fast, and so basically the whole universe is one big gyro system, and so that's just part of a gyro system. That's all it is. Whether it's wrong or right, I think it's a different story. I don't know that there's a right or wrong. That's just part of the universe and how it operates. Period. That's what I understand.
That's definitely an interesting idea.
I mean, well, it's not an idea. It's practically fact. I mean, that's how our solar system operates. It goes around the sun. Our planet goes around the sun over and over and over again. Just it's a gyro system, and that's how it operates. That's how we live and breathe on this planet. How we're able to, because it has all this magnetization going on, and these centrifugal forces going on, and at some point, our planet could reverse and go the opposite direction as part of it. I don't know that would happen, and so may not happen for millions of years, but anything along those lines could happen just because that's the way the system works. Period. Does that make sense? And so when
I'm not
say
sure. I don't understand
that
the science of it all. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying is that when you're saying that our system slows down when we're in alignment with Sirius at some level or another, that's not right or wrong. That's just is. That's just how the system operates due to centrifugal force. That's how centrifugal force operates.
Okay.
Okay. Now we're running towards the end of our show. What would you like to cover? Seriah, is there other issues that you would like to cover?
That's a good question. I don't know. Is there anything else to talk about so far yet?
What do you got coming up?
You have a radio show, right? Yeah. What do you do? Do you present? You do radio shows?
Yeah, I have a show called Where Did the Road Go? I've been doing that for about 6.5 years now. It's at least weekly, sometimes twice a week, depending on how I do stuff. So I'll interview anyone I find interesting. I have a lot of we'll cover listener stories. I have some good roundtable people that I have on regularly. It's a very open format in what we talk about, but we stay away from the conspiracy stuff. We keep it in the sort of paranormal, consciousness, ancient civilization sort of realm, which is basically the stuff I was interested in. It was pretty much Graham Hancock that got me into doing all this stuff, because at a time long ago, my dad used to listen to Rush Limbaugh, religious. It drove me. And Graham Hancock, I found out about Graham Hancock, got really interested in his stuff, and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to be on Coast to Coast tonight." And I said, I'd kind of like to hear that. So I found whatever station I could get Coast to Coast on, because I knew about Coast to Coast, but never listened to it. And I'm like, I probably won't be able to listen to very much of it, and I listened to the whole show. I was just totally fascinated. And eventually finding other podcasts and stuff that he was on, and then other people I wanted to hear. At one point, some of them were not good, honestly. Some of them were great, but I'm thinking, I want to do this. I want to talk to these people. I have all these questions that people are not asking them, and I want to go on and ask them these questions. So I talked to my radio station, and I said, "Hey, can I do this?" And they said, "Sure." And I was like, "Cool." So I just started doing that, but it all comes down to, if I had not found Graham Hancock years ago, I never started doing the show. So a lot of my early shows were also focused on ancient civilization stuff. My first guest was talking about digital reality. That was Jim Elvitz. And then I had Red Scranton on talking about the Dogon and Velikovsky series and stuff like that. And it just, I built from there. So I do less ancient civilization stuff now. I do more probably paranormal stuff now, but I mix it in wherever I can.
That's interesting, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, and I like finding people who have different, I'm not worried about getting really big names. I'm more interested in finding people who have unique ideas that maybe don't have those ideas out there so well.
I like to have new people.
Isn't there a website called Ancient Civilizations or something like that? Have you watched that before, or watched any of their stuff? Checked out any of their stuff?
I don't think so.
I thought
check out my husband's
guy.
website, EnkiSpeaks.com, and it's massive. He works on it every day. ENKI, Enki was the god Enki. EnkiSpeaks.com. He's had that for, oh goodness, I don't know, 10, 15 years now, and it's massive. So check that out. And, if you want to have Dr. Lessin on, he doesn't go on a lot of shows, but he likes to go on. He's got a new book coming out soon, so I'm going to help him promote it. So,
if people are interested, they can find the show at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Every episode is available all the way back to the first one.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I think I'm going to wrap this up. I think we're complete for now. That was very good. I enjoyed talking to you. We covered everything. We called lots of alternative history. What would you like to say about alternative history? Is that different than lost civilization?
Yeah, like no, it's different. It's different interpretations on what happened. Like the most recent show we did on in Walter Bosley's book, where he shows a very view of Napoleon that is generally accepted by critics, and he shows how it was kind of a smear campaign, where they kind of pushed out, like the elite wanted to get Napoleon out. They kind of really nasty stuff to do so. Talks about how he looked at college, went to so that's what I love for alternative known in history and kind of looking at them in a different way, seeing if there's another interpretation to what's commonly known.
How long have you been doing your shows?
6.5 years.
6.5 years.
About the same time when I started, yeah. I started in
And you do them every
2012.
week, every month? How often do you do them?
Every week, and then sometimes a couple extra times a week, depending on the week. So there's been at least one show a week since the beginning of the show.
Got it.
Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up now. So, any more questions?
Okay.
Any comments?
Do you ever do
Final
speaking
word?
engagements or anything like that, Seriah?
I've done a few. I haven't done a lot. I spoke at Fort Fest. I did a small psychic thing that was here in nearby Ithaca. It's not something I do a lot. I'd like to do more of them as I get, probably once I get my books done and stuff.
When
what are your two books
come out?
about? You said you have two books. What are they about?
One is literally just all the experiences I've had in my life. I've actually kept records going back to about 1991. So it's just putting that in book form and talking about everything that happened and my interpretations of it. The other one is taking some of our more unique theories and just kind of getting them out there in print. And hopefully people can expand on them once I present them in a more coherent form.
Got it.
So I've been working on the one about. Huh?
When are you planning to come out with your books?
Well, I've been working on the one about my experience for a few years now. So realistically, hopefully 2020, one of them will be out.
Got it.
Excellent. Well, when you get your book, contact us and we'll promote it for you and we'll talk about it, okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Okay. So, I'm going to wrap this up right now. It's been a great show. I appreciate you coming on, Seriah. Thank you, Andrew Aloha, for coming on today. And we really appreciate your work in this field and your research, because I think all these ideas are important to get out there and begin the discussion. And, it's about the journey, about the adventure.
Yes.
Ask questions. All right.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Aloha.
Aloha, love and blessings. I'm going to play Sanctuary by Jaiya Earthchild. Aloha.
Oh, the heroes and the heroines, the masters of time, have all come together to close the trail of crime. The sages and the holy ones, the masters of destiny, find themselves blessed to be united as one to raise the shield of love. Here we strength and power. Join with our ancestors on behalf of the ones not born, saying stop, do not sign that bill, giving corporate licenses to kill wilderness or animals. Oh no, Mr. President, Mr. CEO, you're intelligent enough to know it's insane. Too little remains. We must declare that nature everywhere is a sanctuary. Every animal, every living tree gives them sanctuary. Children of ancient lands, orphans of war, give them the whales and the dolphins, the creatures of the seas, give them